again, with any technology, there is the potential. So it's almost like looking at not going down the wrong path with the human use of the negative side as compared to the positive side. For me, I do feel like when the internet itself came out and when we had things like Wikipedia, if you felt that humankind are net negative people, then the bad would outweigh the good, and Wikipedia would be full of false and fake information. But
Got it.
surprisingly, there's way more people interested in the truth and in good than there are sort of trolls out there. And to me, that was definitely encouraging. And I think if we look at the potential for weaponized or rogue AI that could be used, for mass warfare or slaughter, and we're trying to foresee and think about how to assess those risks right now, I think the best approach is to augment ourselves in the way that we're looking at those risk factors.
Welcome to the Habits to Goals podcast with Martin Grunburg. It's time to take control of your life. Are you ready to achieve goals faster and more consistently than ever before? You need the Habit Factor. You're listening to Habits to Goals, the podcast that helps you create the habits that lead to success. And here is Martin Grunburg.
All righty, here we go. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Martin Grunburg. You have reached Habits to Goals. Yes, the podcast that is consistently reminding you when you intentionally craft and align habits to your goals, it is the quickest way, the most efficient way to reach and achieve your goals. I have been promising for a very long time an epic interview. I got a good feeling about this. We have a tremendous guest on the line. He is a phenomenal entrepreneur. He is, I'm almost certain, an inventor who holds many patents. And now, of course, we have him on the show because he's written a bestseller. His name is Alex Bates. The book is Augmented Mind. And the subtitle is AI, Superhumans, and the Next Economic Revolution. Mr. Bates, Alex Bates, how you doing, sir?
Doing great, and great to be on with you here today.
Well, it's fantastic to have you. Remember to stay close to the mic. I am slightly bummed we couldn't get you in the studio, but we'll do that next time around. I know it was.
Sounds great.
We almost had you here. So customarily, Alex, we kick off the show with something called the GTR, which is the Good Things Report. Just something top of mind that is good or great going on in your life that you'd like to share with the audience.
All right. Well, gosh, a lot to be grateful for lately, but I had a lot of my East Coast family, all from New York, had a chance to have them out to visit over the holidays out here in San Diego, and just spend a lot of time. And a lot of them had never met my daughter before, who's 2. So just seeing them all interact and celebrate the holidays was really, really phenomenal. So very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful to get the family together over the holidays. And how old's your daughter?
She's pushing 2.5 at this point.
2.5. Wow, you got your hands full. And then the East Coast, where is family coming from there?
Yeah, mostly New York, and then a couple from Chicago. And it was just really, really great to see them. Hadn't seen them in quite a while, so that was awesome.
Beautiful. And I should have said at the kickoff that we can flip for who goes first, but since you've gone first, I'll give you my GTR.
That'd be great.
My daughters, who are not 2.5, rather they are 16 and 18 at this point. So, like I said, kind of a different universe, but you will appreciate this because I know what a brilliant mind you are, an academic you are. They both had straight A's. So I'm slightly bragging, very proud. Couple AP classes. Yeah, the eldest, I think it appears she's going to have her high school career, evening out right around a 4.0. And then the youngest, 16, she I couldn't even spell A plus. She pulled in, I think, 6 or 7 A pluses. So
no kidding.
Yeah, pretty freaky. I'm not sure. Well, I am sure. All the credit goes to my brilliant wife. So having said that, we got the GTRs out of the way. Before we get into this phenomenal book, Augmented Mind, take us back, because as much as I love the work, what we do here on the show is we kind of get into the background about the entrepreneur, the author. We want to understand the person behind the creativity. So, and I'm sure there's a great story there. I know you wrote a lot of this in the book, but I don't want to give it away. So take us back kind of where you grew up, where you went to high school. You know, you were, I think, a self-described geek battling for computer time. So we'll set the table there. Where did that all happen?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mostly grew up in Portland, Oregon, but we went through a period where we moved sort of 6 different cities while I was in elementary school, but settled down in Portland for middle school onwards. And around that time, it was really exciting because the internet was really just coming of age and emerging from telephone networks, which was kind of the earlier incarnation of it.
Right.
And we had the one family computer. So my brother and I treasured every minute we could get and also would, of course, fight over it. But yeah, I got this kind of obsession with this field called artificial neural networks, which was really one of the hot areas at the time and a precursor of all the machine learning developments we see today.
So,
yeah.
Before we go too far ahead there, so you guys had what was a computer back then?
Gosh, we went through, my dad was a journalist, so it started with these things where it was when a typewriter suddenly had a screen about 2 inches wide that you could hold like 20 characters. And that was revolutionary at the time, all the way through, 286, 386, and then early PCs and, those kinds of things.
That's phenomenal. And so you said middle school, you're growing up in Portland, right?
Yeah, that's right. Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
And then you end up going where to college?
Yeah. So I went to Portland to Lincoln High School, and then went on to the University of Oregon, had this Clark Honors College, sort of a small liberal arts college within the greater university. So went to school there locally before I moved down to San Diego.
And then is that where you doubled majored, or was that somewhere else?
Yeah, I kind of triple majored. Well, I double majored in math and computer science, but I took probably 64 credits in neuroscience and computational neuroscience. They didn't really have a major in that, but it didn't really matter. I was just sort of obsessed with that. So that was sort of the third focus area.
So you're already, and what year is this?
This was I graduated in 2000, so late 90s into 2000.
2000, insane. And at that point, you're already trying to kind of span or bridge these two different disciplines and see where they intersect.
Yeah, definitely. I think just really interested in where at the applied end of the spectrum, where the research translated into the real world applications and that kind of thing.
Incredible. And so out of school, just talk us through how you end up in the entrepreneurial venture space, as opposed to, because you were considering going down, the scholarly academic road, right? Yeah,
that's right. Yes. And I had been privileged to do research at a couple of different labs as an undergrad and knocked out about 5 publications. And I think they all expected I would go on the grad school path. And I definitely considered it. And I think I just decided to take a leave of absence. And I was fascinated by entrepreneurship and had read all these biographies and decided to jump in the private sector and figured I would maybe go back. But whether I did or didn't, I always figured I would be somewhere where the applied end of the research and development would really get, pushed into the real world.
So you're taking these classes, like how is it? I mean, you broke it down so brilliantly in the book, but I want you to kind of tell the story where you saw the gap and how this AI was going to fill the gap as it, relates to heavy machinery and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that was a very interesting, almost unpredictable path. I think I always knew that, at least I always had just faith in the power of this field of neural networks and machine learning, and we went through a winter. So what happened is often there will be an economic downturn, a recession, and sometimes that will overlap with one specific type of technology. And sometimes you'll have what they call like an AI winter, where you're not in a recession, but there's like a recession just in one particular discipline. And so we went through the downturn in the early 2000s, right? The kind of the .com bubble burst.
Right.
But then after that, we had this AI winter, and it was partly because there was a big focus on cost cutting, and these neural networks were, siphoning off all the compute power, and people said we need a simpler solution. So during that kind of dual winter of the economic downturn and then the AI winter, I had done a stint at a big data company called Teradata, and then I had done some consulting where I met my co-founder. And I really had no background in industrial aside from a brief company in Oregon. So it was one of those things where this opportunistic thing, my co-founder had this mechanical engineering knowledge, and I brought the kind of the AI to the table.
Yeah. And I mean, just from a chance, happenstance almost encounter, it's a phenomenal story. But I just realized I may have made a gross error. So let's back it up. And by let's and us, I mean you, define what is AI and what do you mean when you're saying neural networks?
Yeah, that's an important question, because these definitions themselves have evolved over the years, as well as the kind of the perceptions and then of course the marketing. But yeah, for me, artificial neural networks was a field that spun out where it was biologically inspired approaches, where they looked at how brains and nervous systems in the animal kingdom could learn patterns and basically compute and give rise to the intelligent behavior we see in all these organisms. And artificial neural networks said, let's look at, just if you look at neurons and they have these synapses, and you can actually figure out how they learn and then just feed in inputs and outputs and get a learning system the way that most animals, are born and then tend to learn and interact with their environment adaptively. So that was a subfield of artificial intelligence. Now, over the last couple decades, what's happened is machine learning came about partly because there's other approaches that are not neural network based that became, powerful and had utility, even though they weren't sort of biologically inspired. So now artificial intelligence tends to be this umbrella term where underneath it you have machine learning, and underneath machine learning you have artificial neural networks.
And so what, if I'm a visual person, I'm trying to understand a neural network, is it really just a bank of servers just connected and doing different things?
Yeah, this one, it's a little hard to visualize, but one way to think about it, an electronic circuit that takes in inputs and computes an output, like a simple one might be a circuit that detects a certain picture that gets projected on the visual inputs. And if it sees it, it outputs a 1. If it sees something else, it outputs a 0. And that would be like a static circuit that it looks for some pattern and then it outputs a number depending on what it sees. A neural network, the key addition is it's a learning system. So it starts off, it doesn't know really anything, almost like a human infant. And then it sees things and it makes a decision, and it's either right or wrong. And there's a feedback loop called error correction, where over time it learns to adapt to recognize specific patterns. And so that's kind of the fundamental of neural networks.
That's amazing. And then AI, in the simplest term or description, how would you, I mean, I understand it's kind of got this broad overarching meaning, and it can mean different things, but maybe I'll take a stab at it. Is it not just the ability for a computer to kind of learn or teach itself? Or is that?
Yeah, I think learning is a key part of it, but even broader than that, potentially, you can theoretically have intelligent behavior that was pre-programmed and not learned. So I think learning is fundamental, but artificial intelligence implies it's a system that a lot of times they'll include the term goal-directed behavior, meaning
right,
it can accomplish goals, and sometimes there's challenges thrown its way. And sometimes it uses learning to accomplish those goals, and sometimes it doesn't. But that would kind of be one overarching definition.
So, and that's incredible, because the title of this show, as you know, is Habits to Goals. So if habits to goals. So if AI is goal-directed behavior or learning on the path to goal achievement, then I think just for that reason alone, we have a good fit.
That's fascinating, kind of a meta perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you the other meta perspective. It seems to me, as I was reading this, so you have this one camp, and this is why I love your book and the ideas behind it. On one camp, you have these people saying AI is bad, it's dangerous, it's scary, and then you have other people saying it's good, and then in the world of habit, you have the same thing. People are saying habit is bad, habit is good. It's neither. And I would submit to you, and I think that's what you're doing here with this work, is it's good or it's bad. It's potentially both. It's how we use it. It's a tool. And what I love about what you're doing is saying not only can it be terrific, but when you combine the creativity of the human mind, the things that humans do intrinsically well and intuitively well, like Intuit, and then you combine that with artificial intelligence, you have an unbeatable force, if you will. So I think that's another meta parallel, if you will.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really deep point. I mean, technology, of course, Homo sapiens are tool users, and that's a fundamental part of what it means to be human. And if you look at the technologies we've used over the years, even the wheel, right? The wheel can be used to wheel tanks into battle. So really, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, fire itself, right? You can get burned, but you can also use it for all kinds of things for survival. So I think that's fundamental, and of course applies to artificial intelligence as just another incarnation of our technology.
Well, it's okay. So I love that you use the term meta. I wanted to say metaphorically. We're both looking at these forces, if you will, and saying this can be good or this can be bad. Now, I want to set that aside and jump back to your background, because as an entrepreneur, you're going through these technology winters, or AI winters, and things are looking pretty dark and ugly. So what was the vision? So you meet your partner and you guys have a mission, which I hope you will share. And then what was the vision? What did you guys see as an opportunity, a problem to solve?
Yeah, well, starting with the problem itself and our understanding of that, and then getting to the vision, I think at the time it was clear that we looked at these big industrial enterprises. We were doing consulting with power and oil and gas companies at the time, and just helping them with some custom solutions to optimize power plants. And we saw they'd have all these repetitive breakdowns. And certainly my co-founder, Paul, came from that industry where he'd seen these huge factories and process facilities would have machine failure that could kill people, it could destroy the environment, all kinds of secondary impacts. And so the sort of challenge was very clear. We also saw that all this new data and technology was coming online, and none of these companies were using it. And it's not that they didn't have good intentions, it's just that they felt like they were drowning in this data. and really didn't know what to do with it. So they'd use these old school maintenance philosophies where it was like calendar maintenance. And really our vision, what we came up with was creating a world that doesn't break down was our mission statement.
Say that again, because I think it's so powerful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So it was creating a world that doesn't break down.
Creating a world that doesn't break down. That is so fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks so much. For us, it definitely, and for our team, I think it inspired us, but we also, to really get those core values instilled in everyone, we would send engineers out to things like drilling rigs so they could experience a day in the life, because when you were out there with those operators, you definitely felt it at a deep level. And these were smart people, and they're doing their best, but they had pretty immense challenges, and that's what we were trying to assist with.
Yeah, high risk, high stakes environment. I'm guessing if a rig or something goes down, it could be millions of dollars a day, and their mindset is, we're just doing what we've always done, which is maintenance by checking. If our calendar says, it's June 12th, it's time to change out a washer or a bolt. And so you guys are saying, well, these machines are producing so much data. And correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a way that AI can run through that data and in a proactive fashion say, hey, this thing might, based on what we've seen in the past, this thing might break down in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because what we found was our machine learning pattern recognition could detect patterns that the human operators couldn't see. And the other key part was it could adapt, because things change, facilities evolve, new equipment is installed. And the previous approach, they would try to do rules and thresholds, like if the cylinder temperature exceeds 190 degrees, then we need to go do an inspection. But those are really too rigid. And with our machine learning neural network approach, we're able to learn patterns, but also adapt to change at the same time.
That's so phenomenal. So let's go back to one of that early AI winner. I thought there was at one point, and it may have been a different AI winner. It was based on somebody writing a white paper or a book and saying how AI is never going to get beyond this or that, and then it was a well-respected scholar, so people started or stopped investing. So talk about some of those challenges.
Yeah, that's right. Because there, in the 60s was an amazing time, because every couple of years you'd have some kind of breakthrough, and a lot of people forecast that within 10 years we'd have superhuman artificial intelligence.
Right.
And then, of course, they ran into some challenges, and there was a paper written. There were a couple things. There was a paper written by an MIT professor that pointed out that the neural networks at the time were unable to basically learn to discriminate simple nonlinear patterns. And to put it simply, they just couldn't solve problems that very simple non-neural network approaches could. And that paper really led to a lot of people to declare neural networks are dead. And it definitely it contributed to a winter in that whole branch. And it wasn't until a breakthrough from a professor later called Jeff Hinton that they basically cracked the ability to have deeper neural networks. But that definitely led to a big freeze in that field.
So, and let's talk about some of those breakthroughs, because I have always been a fan of chess. And all right, just a quick time out. I want to make sure you know about the free habit tracking / building template that I will send to you right away. All you have to do is text 33444. That is 33444, and simply text the word habits. That's right, habits, HABITS, to 33444, and I'll get you your free habit tracking / building template right away. Now let's get back to this amazing interview. it was IBM who saw chess as the perfect game for AI, right? And there was a time when a computer couldn't beat a grandmaster, and then ultimately the computer, I mean, it was Deep Blue, right? IBM's Deep Blue
that's right.
That was able to beat, I think it was Kasparov, right?
Yeah, so that was a key milestone. So Kasparov was sort of dethroned, and humanity by extension, and so yeah,
humanity was dethroned. But then, and again, one of your great points in this book is, and it's so well researched, you talk about this centaur concept, and I can't remember, are they centaur teams in chess?
Yeah, exactly. And that term was coined by, it's been used by a couple. Kevin Kelly, the former editor of Wired magazine, really spread that term. But yeah, these centaur hybrid human AI teams are now the state of the art. So at the time, we kind of felt like, well, I guess we're done when it comes to chess. AI can win. But then Kasparov himself formed these freestyle tournaments where he said, you can have a pure AI team or you can have a pure human team. But the interesting decision they made is, or you can have a hybrid team with humans and AIs working together. And then the surprising thing is that these hybrid teams started winning all the tournaments. And so that was sort of one of the first case studies for this concept of a human AI centaur.
That is, first of all, it is, as a human, that's super encouraging. And it's fascinating because you're taking the creativity and the intuition of a human, you're combining it with, a computer that can read 6 million, 1 million books in 6 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the ultimate, like you said, the superhuman. You have the ultimate competitor. So it could beat a human and it can beat a computer. It's this centaur.
Yeah. That was I think that was a surprising thing, but now we're seeing that spread into other areas besides chess. So that's definitely encouraging for the human role.
It's super encouraging. So what do you think's going on, if you were to guess? I mean, I don't know how you analyze it, but let me ask this a different way. Will a computer using AI or a neural network ever have the ability to be, and I know you get into all sorts of, musically creative and even paintings, but creative like a human, where they have this intuition, at the level that a Kasparov might see something on a chessboard and just intuitively guess something, or is that intuition? Is that just more and more information and experience?
Yeah, it's a great question because really it gets into, there's questions, will computers ever be intelligent? Will computers ever be creative? Will they ever have intuition? And creativity and intuition, I think, add a great perspective because in the field of artificial intelligence, there's been almost this narrow focus on intelligence. And only really recently in the last couple of years, there's been some people also looking at, well, what about creativity and intuition? And those are really separate concepts. They overlap intelligence, certainly, but you can measure them and analyze them separately. And so those add a great perspective. And to your question about when will we have creative computers, we definitely have seen some low scale creativity with some of these specific types of things like generative adversarial networks that we can talk about.
Right.
But I think what we're seeing is the degree of human creativity that scientists and artists is orders of magnitude beyond that. So that was kind of the impetus on the hybrid approach as well.
So is there anything, and I keep wanting to get back to some of these other things, but what makes you, I think we've talked about what makes you most optimistic about what AI, but what might concern you the most? I don't want to say scare.
Yeah, great question. Again, with any technology, there is the potential. So it's almost like looking at not going down the wrong path with the human use of the negative side as compared to the positive side. For me, I do feel like when the internet itself came out and when we had things like Wikipedia, if you felt that humankind are net negative people, then the bad would outweigh the good and Wikipedia would be full of false and fake information. But
Got it.
surprisingly, there's way more people interested in the truth and in good than there are sort of trolls out there. And to me, that was definitely encouraging. And I think if we look at the potential for weaponized or rogue AI that could be used, for mass warfare or slaughter, and we're trying to foresee and think about how to assess those risks right now, I think the best approach is to augment ourselves in the way that we're looking at those risk factors, and then we'll be augmenting superhuman ability to assess those risks and also to make sure we're not going down the wrong path. But in terms of what probably in the short term, what concerns me the most, of course, you have sort of an arms race between the U.S. and China, and certainly the military research organizations are not going to be party to any kind of pacts for pacifist AI, just from a practical perspective. So for me, I think the best bet is to really make sure we have enough research and development on friendly AI to sort of complement that.
Got it. Well put. Yeah, and I don't want to go entirely down that rabbit hole. I'm just thinking about I don't know. It becomes a bit overwhelming to ponder. And I guess I was thinking is at the core level, would there be any way, and I don't think there is, to code some sort of base ethics, or is somebody working on that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting idea. I actually think that there is something to the fact that the vision that you set really drives how you develop technology. And if your vision is just racked by fear or paranoia or anger, you're going to build that into it. And so certainly if you have sort of altruistic intentions, then that's going to help drive the development of the technology as well. So, I think there is something to the mindset of the developers that are building those and how that, but in terms of trying to pre-code these sort of tripwires to stop rogue AI from spreading, I think we're too early stage to even really get into that at this point. There has been some interesting research published, but I feel like we'll need a lot more augmentation to really get into that.
Got it. I just figured I'd throw it out there. So let's bring it back to you as a great entrepreneur, a creator, a thought leader, a thoughtful person. I know that there were, and you cover these in the book, there are days you're worried about things like payroll and debts. And so I guess I'm going to go through some of the standard questions that we use in our interviews. And then one of them is just how do you, AB, battle through tough days?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think everyone's going to go through low points and days when you feel like you should just fold your chips, in and like the final bit of bad news that burst that final little glimmer of hope you had, and it's game over. And we certainly had plenty of those days.
Right.
And
is there any in particular you could share, or if you don't want it, that's fine too?
Yeah, there was a lot of things. There were times where we were late on payroll because an order came in late, or we thought we had an order in the bag for a big major customer, and then got news that their CIO had left the company and now a new one was coming in, and we had no idea if they would carry forward. So there were all these little things, and then just kind of miraculously, when we thought we were, the lights were about to dim, and another one would come in and the lights would turn back on. So there's definitely quite a few of those.
That's incredible. So I'm just looking here with the next. So I don't know if I want to go into this now, but I might as well. How do you define success?
That's kind of a deep one.
I know you studied a lot of philosophy. You read a lot of philosophy books. Again, as an entrepreneur, I just, my sense is you've put some thought into this. I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one that makes you kind of reflect. I would say for me, success is always. It's in part setting goals, of course, and then working towards this. But there's a part of it where, at least for me, you always need to continue to grow and be evolving to the next level towards maybe even transcendence, and so it's both maybe hitting goals, but then also not just freezing and calling it quits. For me, looking at, of course, my particular focus area being artificial intelligence. More broadly defined, success for me would be really getting, I would say, forming a community where we get the key technologists working together towards the positive vision of AI and how it can truly empower humans to transcend some of our current limitations, biological or otherwise. I mean, that's a pretty lofty thing. But for me, if any small thing I do puts us one mini step in that direction, that would be a win.
That's beautiful. And again, I mean, given its habits to goals, there's a lot of the word, I'm using air quotes, goals in that definition of success. And what I find really interesting too, you talked about self-growth, and certainly that's what this show's all about as well.
That's awesome. And that the habits to goals and success is such a powerful framework that, that's a really, really great synergy there.
Beautiful. So you must be reading off my sheet, because that's the next thing. If you were going to tell us your top 2 or 3 habits, the things that make you the man you are today, what might they be? And you don't have to stop at 3.
Yeah, well, a couple. One would be, I guess, a borderline obsession with this area, which gives me the passion to pursue artificial intelligence, for the good and for augmentation of humanity. And I think that following the passion gives rise to the habits, which include a lot of perseverance, a lot of focus. And when I translate that down another level, it means that there's going to be ups and downs, but that's going to, keep me focused on, even during the down periods, continuing to build and work on technology. In terms of other habits, one would actually be a balance between, work sessions and work ethic, but also recharging the batteries and having a morning routine of,
nice.
In my case, some exercise and meditation and that kind of thing. So making sure to have that balance and help keep that kind of level-headed approach.
Well, I was kind of hoping you go down that road. So exercise and meditation. Any particular diet habit you have going on, or just drinking a lot of water?
Well, I have dabbled in some of the, I guess, low things, but certainly not consistently. And I guess the only reason for doing that is because then I can indulge when I want to and sort of choose my calories for what I want to spend them on. But so I haven't really finalized on one particular diet, but I try to eat healthy overall.
Beautiful. So I'm going to deviate out of my routine questions to get back to something I couldn't read in my own notes, which is, you talk about, I think you're labeling the 4th economic revolution. And I want you to, and I may have that number wrong, but elaborate on that concept, why this is an economic revolution.
Yeah, I think when we look back at some of the previous economic revolutions, from things like steam and electricity, and then just digital computers, and how it led to really a step change in productivity that propelled humanity forward, and in various measurable ways. And so looking at artificial intelligence as another step change that can give us an order of magnitude improvement, but in this case, not just the way that productivity has improved in past economic revolutions where there was this massive improvement, but then a lot of the benefits weren't necessarily equally shared. And then, other types of things, in some cases, it was a zero sum, sharing in those benefits. There was certainly the quality of life has continued to improve, but so I think looking at this economic revolution, I saw some differences in the sense that we finally have a chance to transcend some of the sort of historical economic zero-sum limitations where everyone could be augmented to a level where some of our current challenges would be gone.
So what's an example of some of these zero sum? I mean, if any come to mind.
Well, I mean, so in zero sum economics, right? If one person gains more of the pie, it's taken it away from someone else. And in a positive, some sort of abundance post scarcity world, if we had solved energy and clean energy and environmental type challenges, where there was sort of abundant energy, we didn't have some of the limitations that we have right now, and we had a lot more freedom, both economically and otherwise, what we're interested in.
So, so you see AI as bridging that gap, making, for instance, power more plentiful, or human effort, if it's reduced over here, it's gained over here, and that makes other resources more plentiful, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely that sort of thing. And there's certainly some things to work out along that path, because but people talk about a basic income, and then you just might say, well, what would be an abundant income? And then there's still a certain amount of competition, and some of that is actually healthy to sort of motivate people to work harder. But so there's some things that as we evolve to a higher level of thinking, maybe that it will still have to be solved. But I think there's a massive opportunity to do that.
Okay, got it. So let's go back to Mr. Bates then. If you were giving advice to your 20-year-old self, knowing the road that you have traveled, what might you tell yourself, assuming you'd be smarter, and actually you would be smart enough to pay attention?
Yeah, no, that would be really interesting. I mean, if I went back to that time frame in the 2000s, one thing would be to not worry so much about what competitors are doing or negative news you read in the media, but to just really focus on what I was passionate about and building the technology, and everything else will just sort of work itself out, and to not get distracted. So that would be one thing. I think when you're starting out, you tend to really keep an eye on all the potential bad news and risks, and maybe waste some unnecessary cycles on that. And for example, when we were acquired, we were shocked to find out that our sort of the big Goliath in the industry was GE, and we found out that actually they were pretty scared of us. At least there were some opportunities we were doing really well and winning some accounts, and whereas we were living in abject paranoia of these large gargantuan competitors. So one thing would just be to sort of really just focus on your customers, your technology, and not worry too much about what everyone else is doing.
So you were paranoid about this big competitor that ultimately acquired you anyways.
Well, yeah, and we actually were acquired by a company called AspenTech, but GE, we had a chance, a number of their employees came over to AspenTech post acquisition. So we heard kind of the inside scoop, I guess.
Amazing. So, and Talk to me, share. We're rounding third here, so we're almost done, my man. What are some of the transformative books, some of the formative books, some of your favorite books that have helped shape your mindset? If you could share 2 or 3, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, one would definitely be Kevin Kelly's The Inevitables, which is a great look. He was the editor-in-chief at Wired Magazine, and it's a great look at the future and trends, including artificial intelligence, a lot of other really interesting trends. He talks about the transition from sort of things like having a car to automotive services, and really gives a great framework for thinking about some of these evolutions that we're going to see. So that would be a key one. Another one would be Peter Thiel and his book 0 to 1. I thought he gave a great framework for thinking about how to make these technologies to lead to natural monopolies, but that can really carve out major advantages. And that was another great book. I'd probably throw in Habit Factor, because that was.
You did not read that.
I actually do have that book, and I have read it. It's
wow.
But I think really, because that gets into more at a practical level. How do you set up your routines and and how to make habits come more sort of on autopilot? So that'd be another great one.
That's awesome. Oh man, you're killing me. Beautiful. So, in going back to Kevin Kelly, he's the guy you said came up with the centaur.
Yeah.
He came up with that label.
I believe he invented it. If not, at least he certainly popularized it in his book.
Got it. And we are just about done, bud. Any tech tool, website, app, something you cannot live without?
Well, for me, especially as I got into some writing, Evernote was invaluable just for over the years, whether it's on my iPhone or iPad or laptop. Whenever I have a spare moment, I'll record a little note into that. And that actually ended up laying the groundwork for the book that I ended up writing. So I think having that tool to force you to sort of store all your notes in one place instead of being scattered all over the place, that was a key one for me. So, and I know I probably said it 6 times, but this book is so good. It is, and I'm not just saying that. It's an amazing book. It's incredibly well written. It's deeply researched. I'm only 80% done. Now we're going down the rabbit hole about the creativity and the music, generating music and generating art. And I'm sitting there going, is it art if a computer generates it? I'm just like, oh my God. But your book is just magnificent. And I'm blown away. So Augmented Mind. Is there any other app or book you want to mention? Share? Well, gosh, I use so many apps that are really invaluable. I almost feel like we've augmented ourselves with these apps on our mobile devices. And I think for the net positive, like if you outsource phone numbers or calendar, then hopefully you're reallocating that in your brain. But yeah, there's so many I depend on now. I use Trello for tracking projects and tasks.
Trello is amazing, isn't it?
Trello is a really great one. Just the visual, it's just simple, but with the right feature sets. And of course, Zoom for meetings. Pretty major list, but a lot of great ones.
Well, that's great. And so you say things sometimes I'm not sure people necessarily grasp. And what you just said was a fantastic example of, because of the telephone or smartphone, we have all these, nobody remembers the 10,000 numbers that they have on their phone. So they are freely offloading, hopefully, some available RAM in their minds, right?
Very well put. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, I've always said, like, the mind, the brain, I should say, is just, depending on, it might be 500 megs, it might be a terabyte, but the point is there's some limitation. And every time you're taking in something, it's preventing something else potentially from fitting in there. And you just said it, you just went through it, and I think it's worth reiterating. So your grand view for AI is that there's so many other minuscule tasks along the lines of remembering a phone number that will make our lives so much easier and better.
Yeah, that's really fundamental. And in the next generation of artificial intelligence solutions, I think the virtual assistant metaphor is not a good metaphor. We talked about that a little bit in the book, but really to look at what are our human strengths, and if we offload some of these low-level menial things that we maybe waste some of our limited RAM, as you put it, imagine what we could really achieve once we unlocked we're able to focus 100% of our creativity and intelligence. So definitely excited about that possibility.
Well, that's a great way, I think, to wrap it up. If you have any closing comments, I just want to say thank you again for the education, the enlightenment, and the entertainment. But certainly if you have anything other than, and we're going to link to the book, but if there's anything you're promoting or you want to share otherwise, make sure you get that to me. We'll hang it off the show notes. Thank you again, Alex. That was brilliant. Again, you have the floor if there's anything you want to say on your departure.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been a big fan of your show and your writing as well. And just if anyone's interested in community, which we're evolving, we're going to be launching a series of events. We'll probably be posting them on Neocortex Ventures as one of our websites, but we can give you explicit links. But really a key goal is to develop a community of everyone interested in this really augmented path for humanity. And I think a lot of the key players in AI have already expressed interest, but I think we're looking to connect with anyone interested in that area.
That's fantastic. Even better way to end it. And I'll tell you, what a great comment. The book launch party that you did was tremendous, and the talks were great. And just thank you so much for doing your work and painting a prosperous and positive future as it relates to AI. Alex, thank you so much, sir.
Martin, thanks. It's been great.
All right, hang out as we say goodbye. Goodbye.
Will do.
Today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from. If there's one thing I know, and I think Jim Rohn was the one who said this originally, in 5 years, the difference in your life will be largely based upon two things: the books you've read and the relationships you have fostered. Doesn't it make sense to take advantage of the downtime, whether you're on the road, on a run, in the gym, kill a couple birds with one stone, get a book going? It's phenomenal. The more people I turn on to it, the more compliments I get. Not that I've actually done anything. 180,000 titles to choose from. You get one free book a month, 30% off any other book. Again, check it out. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. I'm going to say that again real quick. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. And that is the number 2. And of course, when you support our sponsors, you are supporting the show. So thank you again. I am extremely grateful. We'll see you at the next episode.